On the 24th of February, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. This is an escalation of the Russo-Ukrainian War that began in 2014. It's the biggest invasion attack on a European country since the Second World War. About 8 million Ukrainians have been internally displaced. More than 8.2 million fled the country by May 2023. Devastation, destruction on both sides. Tens of thousands of lives lost, millions forever destroyed, beautiful cities brought to rubble. Many of us may have seen the tanks that were rusted, the Russian tanks rusted and busted by the Ukrainians. We may follow here and there. We may look at the news on a rare occasion to see some devastation and then flip the channel. That's how most of us experience any kind of news other than perhaps internal political news. But Ukraine is important. And though they are devastated by this war and the eyes of the world are on them, the Ukrainians still live. They play, they dance, they attempt to further their values and experiences and live a life moving toward more freedom. They play music, they love, they go about their day with sirens going off, telling them that a bombing raid might be coming their way. Today I have on the show Dan Hackney. And Dan decided, despite being a YouTube engineer, that he wanted to go and support this fight for freedom. One of the biggest fights of freedom since World War II. Now, he's not a soldier. He's not a warrior. He doesn't go out there and fight hand to hand. He's an engineer. He's a developer. He's someone who builds things. So we talked about his experience spending many, many weeks volunteering in Ukraine to help with their efforts. We talked about the punching bag of Putin, and we talked about the sense of life of these Ukrainians, and we talked about the conflict and his experiences and how and why this matters. Technical difficulties.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Computers.
Yeah, computers. And welcome to my perfectly functioning studio that I kind of like hobbled together, and I'm looking over at the monitor, make sure everything's still operating.
Yep.
Things are going well, but I'm trying to revamp Troubadour and all this stuff. So I appreciate you coming in and talking about your interesting experience. But before we get into your interesting experience,
Sure.
I wanted to start this off in a different way than we had talked about. And so yeah, you and I, we were talking this when we messed up, or this, not we, but technology
Computers
messed
failed
up.
us.
So you and I met 2021, right after Snowpocalypse.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
right after I just moved to Austin.
Yeah.
I was originally going to move right at the beginning of this, what ended up being the Snowpocalypse, but flight got canceled, rebooked a flight, that got canceled. I just decided, all right, I'll wait it out, come a week later. But by the time I showed up, everything looked totally normal.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think you were at the third Thursday, I believe. So third Thursday is something that I put on every month, for those who don't know, here for the kind of fans of Ayn Rand type thing. And, the reason I'm saying that is, so I met you there in 2021. I think you and I had gone to OCON's, objectivist conferences, over the years, but I don't know if we'd never met.
I don't think so. Yeah.
you know.
I'd been to the last 2015, I think was my first one.
Yeah. Like I didn't go to that one. Wait, where was that?
I think 2015 would have been Charlotte.
Yeah, I definitely didn't go to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think we knew each other. I met you there. So I wanted to, and so I got to know you a little bit. You're very busy. You're always doing stuff. And I see you from afar more than anything. But we've hung out. We've done some things together. We've done some little events here and there. And I wanted to kind of synopsize you a little bit from my perspective, just because of this interesting experience that we're going to talk about. So like you're an insomniac computer hardware fanatic who's passionate about freedom, something like that. And it's interesting that you have these varied interests where, I think of you as like the king of the dancers in the area. Like
I wish.
That's another thing I would add to your little synopsis is from my perspective.
Sure.
Right. Like I'm sure some people who meet me and go to the gym with me might think I'm the king of the, strong men. That's not true. When you put me in a room with strong men.
Yeah.
But when you put
relative
me in a room
to the objectivist community. Sure.
Yeah. Like there's definitely, I'm probably stronger than most objectivists and that I mean, or most people.
Most all.
But you put me in a room with pros or even amateurs, like I'm insignificant.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I understand that aspect but you have these types of things. And I said insomniactic because you put out these YouTube videos.
Put up these
and Facebook videos.
Facebook
although you work
posts,
for YouTube.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so come on. Some loyalty, man. What are you doing?
All
Forget
the stuff
that Facebook stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff is very like raw and unedited. So it's not like a coherent YouTube video. I haven't learned how to do video editing yet. And so it's, I feel like for a YouTube video, you want something like a bit more polished. For Facebook videos, I literally just start the camera, say like, here's this desk I'm working on making, and ramble on for a bit.
That's a good distinction, but we could talk about social media another time, but
sure.
Cause that's interesting. I want to learn more about the YouTube person's knowledge as I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You can give me, we'll talk a little bit more about.
I should say, just for, disclaimer purposes, I don't speak on behalf of YouTube. Everything is my personal capacity.
Hackney does actually speak for YouTube. He is the secret treasurer.
I am actually the CEO of YouTube secretly. Yeah, no.
Okay. He does not speak for YouTube.
I do not.
He does speak for objectivism. I'm just kidding. Ayn Rand wrote to him at the end of her life. She's like, I'm prepared for Daniel Hackney. Okay, no, so like, but I see these videos you put out on Facebook, and they are it took me a long time to notice this, but I would see a video way too early. Like I'm watching a video at 10 or 11 a.m. and I'm like, I shouldn't be on Facebook right now. But, and then the other thing is
posting at 2 a.m.
Yeah. Then I look at it and it's like 5 hours ago. Yeah. It's like 5-6 hours earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, he just did he just like upload this? Did he actually do this at like 2 or 3 in the morning?
Don't think too hard about it.
I was like, wait a second, what is this guy doing? And like sometimes you're doing the most random stuff. Sometimes you'll like be soldering something, or you'll be organizing this crazy amount of stuff that I don't know what the hell any of it is.
A bunch of electronics.
Yeah, you're like, oh, look at this thing I created to get rid of the sawdust. Like the sawdust, just like just brush it away. I don't know, but you have like this contraption, like from Home Alone Advance or something. Like,
half completed still after 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's a very common theme with me. I have a much easier time starting projects than actually finishing them, because I'll get partway in, I'll sort of figure out something cool, and then it'll be like, oh man, I really should build some bedside tables. So let me get started on that. Oh, actually, I'm taking this trip to Ukraine, so I need to, buy stuff and prepare for that. Oh, I get back, I want to do more electrical stuff, so let me start working on setting up my just very, very amateur electrical engineering desk setup to be better. Oh, actually, let me, so it just.
So you like making.
Yes.
You like doing, right? You like taking actions. You do have what I perceive as an outsider, a very successful YouTube career. And I mean, I'm sure there are people who are above you and do better than you
I am
at
not
YouTube,
the CEO of Google yet.
But again, I'm always taking this from the outside. Notice he said yet. I am, so watch out, whoever's the CEO right now. Just kidding.
That is not. I would not want to. No, my God. No.
I could not imagine being CEO of YouTube of all places.
Oh God.
Like I'd rather be CEO of like a successful $50 million company, right? Not like that's like being anyway. That's another topic.
Sure.
But so yeah, you have these interests. You have a successful YouTube career that is very busy. And what do you do at YouTube exactly?
I'm a software engineer.
So can you talk specifically about what you do?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Super secret.
No. I'll talk about as much specifics as I can get into. I basically write software tools to help other YouTube software engineers do their job more effectively.
Yeah.
For the last couple of years, it's focused around testing infrastructure, because you write some code, you think that it's correct, but YouTube is a large software system. There's a lot of moving parts. You want to test how they're all interacting with each other. And you need a fair amount of infrastructure just to be able to set up the environment to run the YouTube algorithm with a web browser with the client-side code to make sure, okay, I can start up this test instance of YouTube, click around, make sure everything works like it's supposed to.
So you're helping other people, other engineers do the core work of the business you work for, essentially. Is that one way to think about it?
Yeah.
So you like to build things. I also think you like to try new experiences, even if you don't end up liking it. Like I heard I put together like a special little game for you and some friends, and you ended up just going upstairs and sleeping. And you actually do that a lot. Maybe this is because you post sawdusting Facebooks at 4 a.m, but
to inhaling too much sawdust. I mean, we were there for a good 5-6 hours or something, and
okay, you made it most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. But you didn't make it toward the end.
No. I think I've ended up spending so much time a lot of the maker stuff I do is by myself in my house, and so I don't know. Some of it might just be getting exhausted.
You're an introvert
around people. Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
4 or 5 hours is a max for you.
Yeah. Which I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old. Didn't used to be.
You're as old as I am, right?
Yeah.
How old are you?
36.
You're younger than I am.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 38. Oh, that's really interesting because I actually had a poem I might introduce you to if you haven't read it at some point. That's very relevant to your recent experience. So I've been alluding to the recent experience, and the reason I kind of add all this together of because it's an what you did was a shocker to me and to other people, and it was but it kind of makes sense that you would do it when you think about the type of person you are. It's still a little shocking, and it doesn't make 100% sense to some degree.
Made very little sense for me going into it.
Yeah, and this is you went to Ukraine, but not to dance.
No, though I did do some dancing there.
Yeah, you did, but that wasn't the reason you went.
No,
so what was the reason you went to Ukraine?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
not talking 2015.
No. Yeah, I got back September 2nd, I think. It was
2023.
2023.
So there's something happening there.
Yeah, there's
what's going on in Ukraine?
Yeah, people might have heard of the largest war in Europe since World War II.
Yeah. So what were you doing there? Why did you go to this place?
Yeah, so what I was doing there was using my engineering skills to try to help out the Ukrainian military. I'm not going to get into all of the super specifics about it, but yeah, basically drone related stuff.
Okay, so you were helping the Ukrainian military with drones in some sense, or some broad thing. You can't get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
which I didn't sign any NDAs or security clearance.
Yeah, but it's
things,
a confusing. thing to navigate what you can talk about.
Yeah, I don't have any experience in like military OPSEC, so
But I'm sure they're not stupid. Like they understand that you have certain knowledge, and they probably would have asked you, I'm sure. But I don't think it's necessary to reveal exactly what your pinpointed location on a map was.
I'm definitely not going to say, hey, there's a factory here that
we could avoid
makes bombers. Yeah.
So you were helping them build or do something with drones.
Yep.
Basically. And you're there on the close to the front lines?
No.
Okay.
The closest to the front lines I got was a like small fishing pond where we had a barbecue just like 20 minutes outside of Kyiv.
Okay.
And for those unaware, Kyiv is like roughly think of where Austin is in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So like pretty much the center, and the fighting's all the way over to the east. Ukraine is almost exactly the same size as Texas, and
really
about as wide. Yeah,
man, I know what it looks like on a map. I guess I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the next question is why?
Why? Yeah,
that's the bigger question. I understand you can't get into the details of what. Too much.
Why? I'm happy to talk about. Yeah,
but
so right when the war started, or full-scale invasion, I guess the war has been going on since 2014. I was just glued to the news and Twitter and Reddit, just like doom scrolling basically every little bit of information I could find about the war. It just, for whatever reason that I still don't really fully understand, it just grabbed me in some way. I can kind of go back and rationalize it, saying like, this is more geopolitically relevant than other wars and conflicts and stuff in the world. And I think that's true, but that's not why. I don't think that's really why it grabbed me in the beginning. I can't really say exactly why in those first couple days I was just.
What did you know about Ukraine before?
Not a lot.
Okay.
I think I had about like 2 or 3 Ukrainian friends, like that, people that I knew at all in any capacity that were from Ukraine. So it wasn't like I had a deep personal connection to it. It's hard to remember what I knew about a thing back at the time, but I was aware of the 2014 invasion kind of vaguely. One of the Ukrainian friends I had was from Crimea, and so we were back in 2014. I knew her and we were talking about it a bit, but like, I knew vaguely where it was on a map, that it was part of the Soviet Union, but like not a ton beyond that. Almost everything that I know about it now, I've learned in the time since then.
That's interesting.
But yeah, it just like really grabbed me. I started watching, like, there were people putting out like daily update videos about, Russia has taken this town, and here's some videos of, tanks rolling past this point. And here's like some of the weapons that are being used and some of the aid that's being sent and sanctions that are being imposed, and will the West cut Russia off from SWIFT? There's a banking, money moving system that they cut Russia off in the early days.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it. We'll dig in. I want to dig into the actual details. I'm more interested right now in the Dan of it all.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, like, did you have interest in war in general before this?
Kind of as much as any adult
30-year-old
male.
male.
Yeah, exactly. It just,
It's either cooking meats or Civil War.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
kind of thing.
World War II.
Yeah, you got to that age?
Yeah, I got to that point. But I started working on a Ukrainian refugee app, like assistance app, back in the early days, to try to match Ukrainian refugees with primarily Polish hosts, so that people coming across the border, try to help them find some place they can stay, short term. We ended up getting like beaten to market by a different team, and so we didn't want to like crowd the space too much, and eventually ended up
because you weren't like trying to. That wasn't something you're trying to make money on. You were trying to help. So like you're like, well, they're already doing it, so forget it.
Yeah, and I like really did a number on my mental health for a bit, because I remember going to sleep and like, you know, scrolling through social media a bit before going to bed, and just having this thought of like, oh my God, every day that I delay finishing this app is another 100,000 refugees going across the border that don't have a place to stay. And so I felt this like incredible personal burden. I was like, that's not healthy or helpful.
That's interesting. So like, had you ever felt that about anything in your life, even when you were a kid? I mean, I'm trying to think about myself, because it's always, you know, you hear about these, you know, Rwanda massacres, and you're like, you learn a little bit, and it's like, this is horrific. Or you see Blood Diamond, or you see some movie that like really gets you into the horror of something, and you do feel an emotion. Hopefully you do care, but on a certain level, you can't live as a human and care about the entirety of the universe.
Yeah, be personally invested in every, you're going to drive yourself. You're going to just,
you're going to turn yourself into a blob of nothing, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, I'm trying to think. So there's nothing else in the world that's ever done this for you when you were younger?
No. And it was interesting. I felt this sort of jumping ahead now to when I was there. I had this feeling when I was a kid learning about the civil rights movement in the US, and feeling a like weird kind of jealousy, where like I'm not jealousy that like, I'm very glad that, you know, we don't have separate drinking fountains anymore, and you know, stuff like that. But
for the fight.
Exactly. That there was,
I got you.
You had people that were so committed and dedicated to this cause that they were willing to, you know, get beaten by the police, get, you know, the fire hoses turned on them, get dogs unleashed on them. And they said, yeah, this is completely worth it for this fight. And I think that, and I was jealous of that even as a kid, because I thought then there's really nothing in my life that I feel that strongly about. You know, I'd like to, at that point, you know, get into a good college, like to have a career, you know, to have a family and stuff. But there wasn't that, like that. It's not the same as that kind of fight that people had. And I think there's something unique in there. I haven't fully philosophically fleshed it out, but I think there's something unique about a fight being against other people in that sense. If you're working really hard on building a dam to stop a flood, then you're doing something that's going to save lives. But I don't, you know, having never built a dam, I don't know, but I would think it wouldn't have that same kind of like energizing struggle against something as, you know, going and marching, doing stuff to help a war. Like I think there's something there that makes it different when it's against people.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I've thought about that a lot, in the sense of just a human thing living in this in any culture, but especially the West, and being born in a globalized world that has had thousands of years of cultural development that's kind of downloaded onto you. That's not real for most of us, right? Like, my father was in Vietnam War. Right? His father was in World War II. Like, they were in history. It feels like it does feel like, you know, we're in a post-history world in a sense, and yet we're still living in it. And, you know, when all these great things happen, I do think this is why, like, people want, you know, environmentalists sometimes, like not the intellectuals, but just people, like, there's a desire to fight for something.
Oh yeah.
Because
a lot of the anti-racism.
There's also our heroes growing up were these types of people that we look back in movies and TV shows, and, you know, we see them in literature and music. The music of that time. Yeah. It's like, I want to be part of that, but we don't have anything like that. Yeah. We have, oh, I got a B on my final. It's like, what? Like, you know, like my dad took shrapnel in his arm. Like, you know, his bunker was hit. Yeah. You know, and it's like, I don't know. There's I definitely sympathize, because I've felt the same thing. Like, I have gone through periods when I was like, maybe I'm just going to, maybe I should, am I too old to just join the military? Like I almost joined the military right after high school and didn't do it. Like I was like pretty much signed, but they had, and I had a recruiter and we were going through the process. This was 2003. But so this was like, I think they were building up for like the surge or whatever that was going to happen soon in a couple of years. But like, oh no, it was before that. And so I think like
after the Iraq War.
Yeah. So it was like, I think at that time they had so many recruits, they didn't give a crap. So they actually would never do this, I think generally in history, but they
turned people
let
away.
me out of my contract.
Oh, wow.
Before I went. Like I actually signed the contract.
Oh, whoa.
And they let me out. And
like,
hopefully I am too old now for them to want me back. Yeah. And they're not like, wait, what did we do? We need people. Like, no, I'm old and fat. Like, but they went through periods where I was like, maybe I should, like, why didn't I do that? And I have reasons why I didn't do it. It didn't make sense.
Sure.
To a certain degree. Like I didn't understand the war. I was 18 and I was like, well, I really want to do X, Y, Z. I don't know if I can, whatever.
Yeah.
But I still have always had that pull. Right, the pull to do something, at a certain point,
concrete. Yeah,
like something concrete that was like, being part of this world that I didn't have anything to do with building. Right, like you and I didn't really build this world, like not really.
Didn't even
we didn't
close
end
to build
slavery.
This world. Yeah, exactly.
Like we didn't. So people are like, I notice people say this, and I bring this point up all the time. Is like people will say, the great accomplishment of humanity is we ended slavery. It's like we? What do you mean we?
What do you mean this we?
We didn't
stuff?
do anything.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't do anything.
Yeah, like we just got to benefit from the people who like having their faces stuffed in mud and suffocated to death. Like we got to benefit from that fight.
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. But like there's a kind of unearned experience that I think a lot of people and probably the last like since the late 70s, if born in the late 70s, 80s, that you might feel that might, I don't know if that's resonates with you at all.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that ties back into just this feeling of like, there are people in the past that struggled for the good things that I have, and I don't have a struggle comparable to that.
Yeah. So the thing about other people is interesting. Like if that's relevant, I don't know. Maybe that's, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I think of it as more as like the unearned cultural rewards that we're benefiting from in a sense. And then there's like this desire to be part of that cultural development and the cultural fight, on some level, that there's also a romanticism to that fight as well. But that's, the other people thing is something to think about. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's not a fully formed, worked out thought, but that was something I noticed in myself.
Well, I mean, there's something about like, so yeah, when you're fighting, I guess when you develop, maybe this is a cultural thing, when you're developing the world, like if we lived in a time when it was, like have you ever read Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1 or
I have a copy of it sitting on my bookshelf.
It's a really good book, but
when I started a company.
Yeah, and there's others like it where they talk about the mentality of Americans pre like 1960s. Whereas like, there's one example that Peter Thiel uses of there's a guy who came to the Congress or whatever in New York City or whatever it's committee with a whole plan to restructure the entire city. And he's and you know what I'm talking about? Not the power broker guy.
Yeah.
No, not him. Not Cato or whatever his name is. Robert Caro. Not him. I don't think. Okay. I don't think that was him. I think it was just like a normal guy. And Peter Thiel's, so that the Caro.
Robert Moses.
Is that who it was?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I'm not 100% sure about this. But the Peter Thiel one is, I think, a different person. His point was not that it got remade. His point was that he had the audacity to do that plan, to think it was even like somewhat possible to do something. And there was like I don't remember what Peter Thiel calls it, but there's like a doer mentality that we could change the world. I don't think you and I really have that mentality because there's so many bureaucratic things in our lives that we have to deal with.
I think that's part of why I, going back to the earlier point, like doing woodworking and home improvements and things like that is just, I can go to Home Depot, buy a some fish tape and run wires throughout my house. And the only limitation is
Your house is wild, man.
Oh man, yeah.
It's like, what did you just put up? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. It's like
the
flashing
only
over there, building.
limitation is my, skill and willingness to crawl around in 110-degree heat and fish
wait for
cables
winter.
around.
Yeah.
I should do that stuff during the winter, but like it's being able to do stuff without those kinds of impediments, and that was actually
and
something
being a big thinker.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
right. Like being because I think that's always been true for people on some level, but it's different when you have, you're very smart. You have a big mind. You think about global issues, and you're able to think about global issues.
No, thank you.
Making it real. Okay, so that's interesting. So this is a little bit more about your why you did this thing.
Yeah.
Which was go to Ukraine and help build something. Drones that we can't know too much about.
Something drones.
What can we learn or discuss about your experience itself? Like without giving us the details of what you did.
Yeah.
What was your first actually let's go through your first experience of like what made you like what triggered you to like make the decision.
Yeah.
This is something I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Which is a bizarre thing to do in a sense, right? Again.
Yeah. So everything we've talked about before is kind of the background of I was really interested in this and started following it. A friend of mine, a kind of acquaintance, my high school roommate's childhood friend, who is an Army captain, U.S. Army captain, had been to Ukraine like 3 or 4 times before, and when he got back during the war, training territorial defense forces,
okay.
like doing actual military, not fighting, not in combat, but like actually doing
Green Beret
training.
Isn't that what Green Berets do? They basically go into the enemy territory and they train the counterinsurgency.
Maybe I don't. I learned a lot of military terms and stuff I hadn't heard before.
Okay.
But he had been there a couple times. Got back at one point, posted a picture of him smiling with a couple of Ukrainians and saying, "Hey, I just got back from Ukraine," and I slid into his DMs and was like, "Oh man, that's so cool. Is there anything I can do to help?" And I donated some money to buy a 3D printer for things.
He just rolled his eyes. If you're listening,
on the audio,
and hesitated to not explain what he said.
Okay. But he said, "Hey, if you want to come to Ukraine, like, I can get you here and put you in contact with people."
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So he
you weren't like Googling how to go to Ukraine.
No.
And support.
No.
Like there was a kind of person who was in your life.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So he invited me there, and my first thought was, that's insane. What are you talking about? My second thought was, that's unbelievably insane. And my third thought was, well, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was, at the time, especially, I was feeling kind of burned out from work. I'd just been kind of working on the same thing. There's a lot of bureaucracy and stuff to that point earlier. And so there was kind of almost like a sales aspect to the work I was doing. Like I built this thing and I have to sell it to the other engineers to get them to use it. And I realized that a friend of mine made this observation that apparently I hate sales so much that I literally would rather go to an active war zone than subject
as a salesperson. I am not offended because I get it. I totally understand.
I am very glad that there are people who do sales, and I'm especially glad that those people are not me.
Yeah, I understand it, but you didn't like it. You weren't happy. You were in bureaucratic stuff. Like you like your job.
Yeah,
YouTube. But there's like when you're at a big corporation,
there's
going to be stuff that's inevitable.
So as we talked about it a bit, I got more and more. I talked myself into the idea of going. I reached out to a friend of mine that I knew through college and later Zouk dance, and said, "Hey, I know this is a weird request. Like, would you be interested? Maybe like, don't freak out and going to Ukraine and doing some volunteering. He was like, yes, let's do it. I'm there.
The other person said yes?
Yeah. He was like, because he'd been living in Poland for a while.
Oh.
And
We'll have to talk about why that's relevant. But.
Yeah. But yeah, he was complete. I thought I was going to have to do some convincing. He was immediately on board. And so that was nice because we ended up rooming together in an Airbnb in Kyiv. And it was nice just to like have someone that I knew well ahead of time. Like, I figured if things got crazy, like I had someone that I knew well that I could like, sort of fall back on, sit on a train for 20 hours with.
And did you like this person, hopefully?
Yeah. We
worked out all right.
Yeah, it was great. We, like, it's the most time we'd spent together, like, pretty much ever. And it was nice to, like, spend more time with him to, do all the crazy Ukraine stuff.
What's a crazy Ukraine thing?
When we first got off the train and we're going to drive over to the Airbnb, so like, the first 20 minutes of setting foot in Ukraine, the translator / guide / point of contact for everything that we had showed up in this like little old Citroen, whatever, French car company, manual transmission car. And we had 3 people, one of whom had like a big military duffel bag, another U.S. veteran. And I had 3 checked bags and a carry-on bag and a backpack because I brought a bunch of like, medical kits and drone parts and, electronic stuff. Like the point was to like bring a bunch of stuff over to donate it to them. But I had these 3 giant bags. Like there's no way we're fitting this in that car.
Yeah.
Open up the trunk and there's just a rocket launcher.
Okay. Did you bring the rocket launcher?
I did.
Okay, because you brought some show and tell.
I did. Yeah.
And I was like, did he bring a rocket launcher in his HEB bag?
I really wanted to. It was painted by a local artist. Yeah. And auctioned off at a fundraiser concert at this like really beautiful.
It's a used rocket launcher. Like
Used so no
to shoot missile. At Russians.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no. It's a single use rocket launcher. No electronics, no firing, and like it was basically just a metal tube at that point. Like,
got it. Yeah.
You could not reload it and use it. There's no scope, no trigger, no nothing on it. So it, totally inert metal tube, but I just, you open the trunk. Like I'd never seen a rocket launcher in person before. So I opened the trunk and I'm like, oh, welcome to Ukraine, I guess.
Yeah.
Kyiv is a very hilly city. And so we got, almost.
What'd you do with the bags?
One of the guys sat on them in the bag.
Did you explain that you're not a prima donna American, that you have drone parts in here?
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, if I was like a Ukrainian, it's like, oh, these Americans, like 6 bags, like getting over here, like we're trying to fight a war.
Yeah,
you're like, no, there's drone bomb trying to help.
Yeah. No, he knew what the deal was. He was amazingly just rolled with everything, and. Yeah, the level of I know we're jumping around a bit, but like the level of gratitude that just everybody felt towards us was like absolutely overwhelming. I mean, you hear about Americans traveling abroad, and people think, oh, it's dumb Americans, like stupid and stuff. I was personally thanked on multiple occasions for sending over M2 Bradleys, infantry fighting vehicle, carries like
they were thinking
6 to 7 people.
For what the American government.
Yeah, exactly. They were like,
you do pay a lot of taxes.
I do.
You
but
once paid for like 2 states as well. I know it's state, not federal, but still, you pay taxes.
Yeah, but like, I didn't send over. It was amazing to see.
Yeah,
these people just incredibly grateful because. For a lot of the Ukrainians, their biggest fear is that the world will forget about them. Mm-hmm. They're willing, as one of them put it, they're willing to fight this war with sticks and stones if they have to. They would much rather not if they have, F-16s and Abrams tanks and HIMARS and whatnot. It's going to go a lot quicker. They're going to lose a lot fewer people, but they are like fully committed. So the only question then is, does the world forget about them? Do we get bored and move on and leave them kind of out to dry? And so seeing Americans not just, write some letters to Congress, but actually willing to put, ourselves in not much harm really, but like, go way out of our way, put ourselves in some amount of danger to go there, like really sends a strong message for them that like, oh yeah, there are Americans that really care. And so just our mere presence there was like a morale boost for them.
Okay. So we'll talk, I think we should talk a little bit about what's going on with the war itself.
Sure.
I know I don't know, I'll assume people don't know all the details like myself. So I know the basics. I know the background. I know a little bit, I recommend people, there's a show I like, the Brook show. He has a new show. He's talked about this. He has a lot of knowledge. I don't know if you have ever listened to his show on this stuff. On Ukraine,
not on Ukraine specifically,
because foreign policy is kind of his field essentially, right? He was in the Israeli military. He was an intelligence, I don't know if officer, but he was in the intelligence. Yeah. So anyway, he knows a lot. He studied this a lot. So I found him very useful as just a general interest. And he made a good case. He's made good case for why it's relevant to us. It's not like some, backwaters war or tribal war in Africa that's sad and horrific, and it'd be nice if we could, but it's not really going to affect us. This could easily affect us.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and it already does actually a lot, but I mean, it could easily really affect us.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, like, if you imagine, I don't know much, I know there's a war. What's the first thing you want me to understand as somebody who's wearing, what's the shirt you're wearing?
Oh, so this, apologies to the people only listening by audio. This is a vyshyvanka, a traditional Ukrainian shirt. I bought it in Lviv. It's a medium-size-ish city in Western Ukraine. Beautiful city, but it was Ukrainian Independence Day when I was there. And so there were a bunch of shops set up selling various things. And I, among the other, like, swag or whatever items that I wanted to get, I wanted to get a vyshyvanka, and
Looks cool,
so I bought one there. I
and you have a hat too.
Do
you want to show off your hat? I messed it up with the headphones.
It's all good. I'm not much a hat person anyway. So for people on audio, it's regular black hat with a Velcro pad, and then a Ukrainian flag and American flag kind of cut diagonally, laid on top of each other. For those unaware, the Ukrainian flag, yellow stripe on the bottom, blue stripe on top. It's yellow waves of grain with blue sky above. Agriculture is extremely core to, what Ukraine has been about forever since humans were living there, and still carries over to this day that they put it on their flag.
Yeah. So
that's another aspect. I know we're jumping around.
No, I'm doing that on purpose because I just want, like, you're somebody who cares deeply, obviously. And so, like, explain it to an American who's vaguely knowledgeable, but you're someone who's taken this on in this way.
Sure.
What's the first thing you want me to understand?
Yeah. So I guess one thing I could say is that this is really a continuation and escalation of a war that started in 2014. So, kind of briefly, because I'm also certainly not an expert on this. In 2014, the Ukrainian president at the time there was this like tension in the country, and this has been a thing for its whole recent history of, do we move more towards Europe or more towards Russia? And there's a real tension that you can see it reflected even in some of the architecture. But he was going to sign this deal moving closer to the EU. At the last minute, he switched signed a deal going closer to Russia. Basically, it's oversimplifying.
Oh, that was 2014.
2014, yeah.
I didn't
There was
realize
a
that. Okay.
popular protest uprising, eventually basically chased him out of the country.
I see.
And so the country is kind of in a bit of chaos. They've, chased this guy out, had stole an enormous amount of money from the government as he left. His former mansion is now the Ukrainian Museum of Corruption.
What's his name?
I'm
Okay. That's fine.
blanking on it right now.
President of
Yeah,
Ukraine
not
in 2014.
Lukashenko is Belarus. Oh my God.
It's
It's going to come to me at some inopportune moment.
Go ahead. But you're talking about why he was the House of Corruption.
Yeah, very corrupt.
He got chased out by this counter protest,
Popular uprising,
because he signed, essentially he went over toward the side of the Russians.
Yeah,
but the people didn't want that.
Yeah, people didn't want that. You're gonna find it, and I'm going to freak out.
It's all good.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be knowledgeable on this. It's just on the
Petro Poroshenko?
No.
Victor
Yanukovych. That's it. Yeah.
Victor Yanukovych.
Oh my God. I'll pretend it's because I'm tired or something. So yeah, Yanukovych gets chased out in the kind of ensuing chaos as the country is like, everything, the government is having to be sort of reformed. Russia invaded Crimea. This is a peninsula off the southern edge of Ukraine. It's almost an island. But Russia invades, rolls in, basically like lightning runs to the administrative centers, puts their troops and says, this is Russia now. And everybody's kind of too confused and disoriented to really put up any resistance. And so it ends up being kind of a fait accompli, that like nobody was willing enough to like stand at the doors and shoot at the Russian soldiers to stop them from coming in. So they go in, occupy it, and everybody's kind of like, I guess they took it over now. And meanwhile, in the East, there was, it's kind of unclear whether it was a genuine organic kind of rebellion movement, that some of the eastern parts of the country, this is the Donbass region, started a revolt against the Ukrainian government. The east of the country is in general more towards Russia. The west of the country is more culturally towards the rest of Europe. And so people in the east unhappy about the fact that Yanukovych, this pro-Russian president, got overthrown. Pretty quickly into it, Russia sent soldiers, the Russian military, in to support the rebels, and ended up, it was a more active war for the first year or so, ended up kind of fighting to somewhat of a standstill. By 2015, 2016, the lines had more or less frozen. And at that point, there was very low level fighting occasionally, but basically the lines had frozen at that point from 2015-ish on. And so there's never really a ceasefire. There were still people dying occasionally from it. Then in 2022, Russia invades, full scale, all out invasion, makes a run towards Kyiv, the capital, which is kind of in the center of the country, rolls forces up north from Crimea, captures some of the cities along there, rolls in more troops from the east, from the Donbass, and eventually ends up capturing all the land along the southeastern coast of Ukraine, cutting off its access.
I'll try to put like a map.
A map, yeah.
So people can see that. Or I would recommend looking it up. But yeah, it helps to have a map to see.
To visualize.
Yeah, to kind of visualize it a little bit. Because, wars tend to be about geography often, right?
For sure.
And, okay, so... But how would you encapsulate the most important thing you'd want me to know as an American? That this is a war that is a continuation. Yeah. Is that the number one thing? Okay.
Partially that. I guess also that I would say this is the most clear good versus evil conflict that we've seen maybe since the Second World War.
Well, but there's been a lot of, like I was mentioning, like the Rwandan massacres. There's been a lot of pretty evil people in the world.
I'll say certainly in Europe. I don't know the history.
I mean, Iraq, like Saddam Hussein was pretty evil.
Yeah,
in some ways, right?
Oh,
like
for sure.
The Shah of Iran. I think there's been evil people.
But
now, I'm just only picking on something because I think you're trying to say there's something else there.
Yeah,
it's not just the evil.
Yeah, well, and the point I would make is that, you know, in
North Korea.
Yeah, but like, you know, active war.
Okay.
You know, in Iraq, for example, we overthrow Saddam Hussein. We end up with kind of a failed state in its place. Saddam Hussein absolutely deserved to be overthrown, but now Iraq is kind of a mess. He kind of got replaced with like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So, you know, in Syria, it's like, all right, Assad is a bad guy, but he's kind of fighting against ISIS. Like, both sides there are kind of bad. Maybe he's worse, but there isn't. Like,
so you're saying one is good in this situation, one is evil.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very clear, like, there was a side purely minding its own business, the Ukrainians, and then Russia came in completely unnecessarily. Ukraine posed zero threat to Russia, and starts committing genocide. I mean, literally, there's, you know, stats I can give. They've deported 700,000 Ukrainian children by Russia's own report.
Deported?
Yeah, captured Ukrainian children, brought them back to Russia.
That I was not aware of.
Yeah.
So they just like stole children.
Yeah, in the occupied areas.
Just to like be able to raise them in Russia?
Yep. Trying to train the Ukrainianness out of them. Yeah, some of the children they've been able to, I don't know, maybe prisoner swap or, you know, get back. Have told truly horrific stories about, you know, abuse, sexual abuse, torture, beatings. I mean, just, you know, unnecessarily sadistic things. You know, and we might get into it, you look at some of the cities in Ukraine that were occupied and then subsequently liberated by the Ukrainians, Bucha being one of the most famous ones that I actually went to visit to, like, see myself. This was a city just outside of Kyiv that was occupied on, I think, the third day of the war, of the, you know, full-scale invasion, that by about April, the Ukrainians pushed the Russians out after the Russians retreated from the attack on Kyiv. There was evidence of rapes, tortures, rapes of girls as young as 14, summary executions, just in people lined up in the street and just shot sequentially in the back of the head. I mean, you know, truly.
How much of this is shown in American media? Because you follow that pretty closely. Did you know that before you went?
I did, yeah. I specifically wanted to go to Bucha to see it. Most of the stuff I've learned, I haven't learned from watching, you know, CNN, Fox News, MSN, like any of the mainstream American media things. There are YouTube channels, there are websites that will publish reports.
Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. And some like actually legitimate people and not just like random people. On
no, I know, Twitter, but like people who are using Twitter to like do a live report or something.
Yeah.
This seems to be where a lot of the news of the world actually comes from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's people live tweeting something that they're seeing in pictures and
Yeah.
Okay.
And so.
Because I hadn't really heard about that.
Yeah.
It's possible that it was mentioned, but I don't remember. I'm sure I would have remembered that story.
But it was there was between 75 and about 450 people died in what's called the Bucha massacre. You can go on Wikipedia and search for that. But that was the initial thing that prompted the opening of war crimes investigations against Russia. Because, like, you know, under laws of war, you're not supposed to just execute and rape and torture civilians for no reason.
This is like the UN, though, right?
Yeah, Geneva Convention.
Russia doesn't really care about that.
Yeah, I mean, they were.
They only play that game to pretend.
Yeah,
They've always been like that.
yeah, and that's
Dictators are always like that.
That's
They'll join these things until it doesn't.
until it's
their needs.
inconvenient. Yeah. I mean, the very invasion in 2014 was a violation of the Budapest Memorandum, which is a deal signed between Ukraine, Russia, the U.S., and the U.K. in 1994, wherein Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons and a number of long-range missiles and bombers and stuff. They actually, like, you can find pictures of Ukrainians, like, torching apart their long-range bombers, because the idea was, as part of denuclearization, they, I think, gave some of the warheads they gave some of the warheads to Russia, because during the Soviet Union, there were, nuclear missiles and warheads spread out across the space. And the deal was Ukraine gives up nukes, but the signatories to the memorandum would respect Ukraine's territorial integrity. Well, we see how that went.
Okay, so again, I guess the second thing would be so the first thing is you'd want me to know that this is a long continuation, but and that this is the first sign since World War II of really a power of evil, which is Russia.
Yeah. Just to be clear. Yeah.
Well, I do think people wouldn't agree with you in American public. Like, there's a lot of people who think that they're both bad in similar ways to what you might have mentioned about, like, Assad and ISIS, where maybe one is a little worse, but they're basically both, bad regimes, and they're not good. And so
it's kind of this, like, hey, let them duke it out.
Yeah, let them duke it out. What does it have to do with us?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Yeah. And those are sort of two semi-related but separate questions of, are they both equally enough bad? And separately, what does that have to do with us? On the are they both bad question, something people bring up, like, Ukraine was an incredibly corrupt country prior to this invasion. Like, there's no sugarcoating that. On I think it was like 180th, somewhere in there, of most corrupt countries in the world. There's a bit over 200 countries, depending on how you count total. So it was one of the most corrupt countries in the world prior to this invasion. One of the poorest countries in Europe. This was I think the election that put Yanukovych into power was they had to rerun it because the first time there was, like, widespread election fraud to the point that they actually rerun the election. Like, this is not it's not Switzerland or something. Yeah. It's not, Norway, where everything's run perfectly, and, like, for sure. But the point is that there's a critical, important difference between a country that has internal problems, that's corrupt, that doesn't protect rights in the way we'd like, but keeps to itself, and one which has pretty much all those same problems. Russia was close to Ukraine on the Corruption Perceptions Index, but on top of that invades a neighbor that poses no threat to it.
Yeah. So it's almost like you have, like, if you had two households, one of them is, they're sleazy, gross, not good. The other sleazy, gross, not good. But one of them goes over to the other one and lights their house on fire.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that. And so, like, which one's more corrupt?
Yeah. So they're both corrupt, but one
both
is
not ideal.
Yeah, one is.
And then my also understanding was that even before this happened, there was, like, this election you were talking about is a sign that there's real struggle to try to become more Western. So this is not something you see in Russia, right? There's not that many. There's people that want to be more Western, but it seems like there was real movement even before the war to not go pro-Russia, to go more pro-Western. And basically it seems like maybe Putin saw kind of the writing on the walls, and he's like, I better act now because I want this thing, this massive breadbasket of Europe. And, I don't want this to go under the purview of the West.
Yeah.
And so he justified it. These are some things that I do know, like he did have justifications of cultural history and, these are our people. They're part of our union. They're
basically wayward Russians.
Yeah. They're basically Russians. Like that's what we need to bring back, the majesty and greatness of Mother Russia,
Greater Russia.
Yeah. And so that then he basically said that was his justification for slaughtering people, which is anybody who takes that seriously can tune us out because that's ridiculous. That's nonsense.
Yeah. And not to reductio ad Hitlerum it, but
did you say Hitlerum?
Hitler. Yeah. It's reduced to Hitler.
I figured that's what it meant.
Yeah. The parallels there are kind of hard to ignore, in that, Putin, Russia claimed that, there are these ethnic Russians in Ukraine. They really should be part of Russia. They're, wayward Russians that we need to bring back into the fold. And so we need to go in and, occupy the country. I mean, that.
No, I know. It's just what it's.
Yeah.
I know that's how he thinks.
That was exactly Hitler's rationale for annexing the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia and annexing Austria, that, these are really just Germans that have lost their way. We need to bring them back into Germany. It's exactly the same thing. And I think it's harder for us to understand in the U.S. because there's no such thing as an ethnic American like in any
some
meaningful
people think
way.
There is, but
I guess the sort of general European mix.
I think it's part of the negative trend in America is thinking that. But there's I think not really. There's not, but some people think there is.
Yeah.
And that's when you have problems, when people think there is this thing.
For sure.
Yeah, it's like.
But like in Europe, you have, thousands of years of, ethnic Russians and ethnic Ukrainians and ethnic this and that. And so there's a way that ethnic argument can resonate more in countries where there is more of an identifiable ethnicity than in the US. Yeah,
I don't know. That's, I mean, I don't think it's ever identifiable other than I think the different thing is that they've stayed put so long and we've changed so much. Yeah. That's the difference, I think, is that a lot of their, like, it seems like in a lot of these tribes, cultures in the West, in Europe have really, like the Normans becoming the French really did stay there. Now they intermingled with a lot of people. There was conquering but I think there was a dominance of that. Maybe that's part of it. Yeah. You just don't have that. Yeah, there's just in the US. Yeah, I mean, this is a longer conversation. We could maybe some other time about the views in America, because people are trending toward those kinds of, like, well, I can imagine somebody on the right, someone who's leaning nationalist sentiment saying something like, well, I mean, like 200 years is that we don't have thousands of years. Like we have 200 years. 200 years is enough. Yeah. Like this is our people now. Yeah. And that's who's American. Like the people who were there, and like, my people were on the Mayflower, and like, like that kind of thing. Like, and so it's, I don't know if you need 10,000 years of development to have that, because it's equally arbitrary. Yeah. Both are arbitrary. That's the problem. And, so saying that it's 1,000 years versus 100 years that's the issue with tribalism. Yeah. It's like they're both, it's really about individuals. It's like I was saying at the beginning when we were talking about this cultural world that was building, and we want to build something of our own. I think some of the negative things that it can definitely manifest is like pretending like you're part of this thing that created everything just because of your genealogy and your skin color, really. Yeah. Because I mean, I look a certain way, but I have like 4 or 5 different, I have Moroccan and Jewish as well as German, Belgian, French, and other things. But I because it's so arbitrary, I could probably go into certain right wing back doors and play it off as like a white boy, because I am like, I look white, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's because it's all freaking made up.
Yeah.
It's all garbage made up.
For sure.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. So I want to get back to, I want to make sure we really talk more about I want to pull in some of your experiences more.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little bit more of
Ukraine
this,
stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this background now.
Yep.
Tell me more of let's just talk about more of your experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
Like give me a launching point for, like you have this one story, you're getting there, we're in this war, there's this background.
Yep.
What was your first experience there after this? Like, were you scared?
The rocket launcher with the car.
Yeah. Like what was going on?
Yeah. So it was interesting. Like when I was preparing to go, I was talking with, my contact, I guess I can say, John Leathers, the founder of Ukraine Torch, which is a nonprofit that I went with.
Okay. Ukraine Torch.
Ukraine Torch.
Okay. This is something people can support.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
501c3 can donate.
Tell it. Ukraine Torch.
Yep.
Go support.
I've been in sort of a weird space about like what should I say and what should I not. But yeah, there's a website and everything. I have.
Yeah, show me some stuff. I know you brought some stuff in your HEB bag. He's reaching over to show me.
We got a patch from Ukraine Torch.
All right. And so this is a Liberty torch with wings. And is that a flag?
Blue and yellow Ukrainian flag. And then.
No, I mean, what's he holding there?
Oh, I think that's a flag.
That's because that looks like. Sure. Yeah.
I should learn more things about the
I'm just curious.
But yeah, and then the outline of Ukraine,
so
including Crimea and the Donbass regions.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So they're like, we're not giving that up yet.
Yeah.
Good
exactly. That's very much a big thing there.
Yeah.
So I was talking with him, figuring out should we, what do I need to do to bring? Should I like get cash at the border? Do I have to like stock up on, this or that? Like how am I going to get money? Is my card going to work? And it's like, Dan, you use your cell phone to tap and pay for things. Like, what are you talking about? Like public transit, you tap your phone, do you
guys have toilets?
Do you have toilet? Yeah. It's like,
is there running water?
Come on.
But I mean, come on. Like I get it where they're coming from, but like, you don't know. Like,
exactly. I didn't know how much was intact.
You're trying to learn, and
exactly.
You're doing it respectfully, I think.
Yeah, and it's a war zone, so I had like ideas of just I didn't know. Is there going to be anything I have to prepare for? I got there. The very first air raid siren that went off while I was there, I slept through, because it was right after I was on this long train ride. Because you can't fly into anywhere in Ukraine. All the air traffic is all closed. That was kind of a weird thing. I saw one airplane the entire time I was there, and it was a military transport
that's wild.
airplane. But there's no civilian air traffic.
Drive in.
I took a train.
Or a train.
Yeah. So I flew into Warsaw, went to a dance festival in Warsaw, and then on the way
he soldered something at 4 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
Did some YouTube code and then trained into locomotive into Ukraine.
Yeah,
with his probably hard sleeper.
Yeah,
just on the train after 12 nights of partying. And let's go fight.
Yeah, exactly. But sort of speaking of the like Soviet legacy heritage, you have to take a train from Warsaw to Chelm, this small city in Poland, switch tracks, and then go the rest of the way, because Ukraine uses the old Soviet railway gauge, which is, I think, slightly wider than like the European gauge. So the same train can't go along.
They'd have to like switch trains.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And all told, between getting on the train in Warsaw and getting off in Kyiv, I think it was about 20 hours. So it was a sleeper train, but like not first class or anything. So it was not super comfortable. By the time I got there, I was exhausted, slept through the first air raid siren. The second one was during the day. I kind of looked at my roommate I was there with, and we're like, should we go down to the basement, like a shelter, I guess, and kind of walked down, found the parking garage beneath the apartment building we were in. And that was the last time we paid any attention to the air raid sirens.
Well, were they just like broad warnings that something's happening somewhere in Ukraine, or was there some chance that a runaway missile would hit that area or something?
Well, it wouldn't be a runaway missile, it'd be a specifically targeted missile towards Kyiv. I think
I heard that Russian military was not good at this stuff. So you never know. It's like,
sure,
they're just shooting this area.
Yeah.
I played Hell Let Loose on Xbox with Russian material, and it's like, it's very inaccurate.
Yeah. Well, so there's
that's World War II.
Yeah. So on that point, there are kind of two competing narratives, I think, both of which are largely wrong. Is that, on the one hand, it's Russian military stuff is crap. Their equipment is garbage. Their units are terrible. They have low morale. They're, 2 seconds from the entire line breaking and collapsing. And then on the other hand, Russia's second most powerful military in the world is, the unstoppable tanks and artillery and stuff. Ukraine should give up because the Russian military is just too big and powerful. I think both of those are wrong.
Somewhere in the middle, probably.
Yeah, exactly. There are serious problems with the Russian military, but it's absolutely still dangerous. They, launch missiles. Pretty much anywhere in Ukraine is vulnerable to a missile strike at pretty much.
So what were the air raids for specifically, though, if you didn't worry about them?
Yeah, so I think that they would sound an air raid in a particular, because it was by region. They would sound an air raid, not just for the whole country, but for Kyiv specifically, or for Lviv. And I think what it was is if they saw either a ground-based missile launch, or a lot of the long-range missiles that Russia launches are air-launched cruise or ballistic missiles. So they'll fly a bomber up, fly it towards Ukraine, drop a missile off of it, and send it the rest of the way. And if the Ukrainian early warning systems saw signs that some kind of strike was coming in a certain direction, then they would set off, air raid sirens all along the flight path of the missile, because a missile is not going to pull a 90-degree turn. And
wait, so you were in the flight path of a missile?
Yeah, basically.
So why did they tell you not to worry about it? It still seems...
They didn't tell us not to worry about it. You look at the Ukrainians walking around, and the siren goes off, and they're, just kind of down looking at their phones and continue along.
That's all. So you didn't have any evidence that there was nothing to worry about?
No. Well, the evidence I had is that none of the Ukrainians reacted to it at all. They just went about, pushing their kids around in strollers and hanging out at restaurants and stuff. Yeah, they just, I think probably after a year and a half of it, you can't.
I see.
As humans, you can't.
There was a risk of it hitting.
Oh yeah, and some place outside Kyiv got actually successfully hit a week after I left. I think a death and a couple of injuries or something. So yeah, I don't want to act like the risk was zero, but pretty quickly I just ignored. I uninstalled the notification app from my phone. Jeez. And just, because
I guess if you weren't going to do anything about it, what's the point of knowing?
Exactly.
If you're going to hear it and then duck and cover at least.
Yeah.
But if you're not even going to do that, then I guess you don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'd hear the siren outside.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, just
you
nobody reacted. Yeah,
I don't want to know. I'd be like, huh? What's going on over there? But I guess that wouldn't help.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, look. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, theoretically, you're supposed to go and find a bomb shelter, but again.
How often did it happen?
It would vary a lot. You'd have some periods where it'd be 3 or 4 days without a siren. And then I think the most we ever had in one day was 5 separate air raid
within 24
warnings.
Hours.
Yeah. Wow. But so it was kind of all over the place, very random. But yeah, it kind of like, I don't know, almost like a weather forecast. Like, oh
Yeah.
man, it's feeling pretty missily out today.
Jeez.
They had, they had a lot of.
There are a lot of
sarcastic humor
jokes
about
there
it.
about death and war at this time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tried to tread very carefully because I
would
was like, I
imagine.
don't want to.
But I don't know how else you handle it. You got to joke
Yeah.
about it.
For sure, especially
You can't be like super serious and freaked out the whole time because
Yeah.
you're gonna
your
your blood vessels will pop. Like you
Yeah.
gotta, I always tell this story of like I had a friend in San Antonio who was an ER doctor, and he told me this like jokingly, and he was serious, but he was laughing, and he was just talking about like I have a death jacket, and and I was like horrified, but then when I thought about it, and we talked about it a little bit, and he was just saying like, yeah, I mean, I see mangled kids, and I have to give news to people about their son has died or something. Like I cannot do that job if I don't have the release of humor.
Yeah.
And so I imagine there's some of that, hopefully, or not hopefully, but I'm sure there's some of that in Ukraine, where it's like we're raining missile. Like, yeah, you have to. I would imagine you'd have to have that sense of humor. Otherwise, you couldn't get through it.
Yeah. From what it sounded like, the first month or so, there was a lot of like people huddled in the subway system, which Kyiv is very hilly, and so some of the subway stations are ridiculously deep underground.
Yeah.
And so there are people like hiding out in there, but eventually, one, especially after Russia got pushed out of the north and their attack towards Kyiv, there wasn't the like immediate risk that like the city would be overrun, and eventually people just, you gotta get on with your life.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of weird in that, and I felt very mixed about this. Like when I was just walking around the city, going to restaurants and stuff, if you didn't think too hard about it, you could easily mistake it for just a totally normal European capital on any other day. There's, people walking around, going to shops and restaurants and, going to McDonald's and, going out to bars and stuff and walking through the park and jogging, like totally normal city, European capital type place. Didn't seem like anything was amiss. And then, you'd have an air raid siren, or you'd realize, oh yeah, there's no planes flying overhead, or you'd have these reminders like, oh yeah, right, war. But I had this feeling, and like, I don't know if it's insensitive or what, but it genuinely felt like this would be a good place to go purely as a vacation, just because it felt, to me, it felt safe enough.
Insensitive to feel that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it would probably be a little insensitive to
actually
do that.
go and just say, oh yeah, I'm hanging out. People
unless you're going to at least give money.
Yeah, and even going there and buying stuff is helping their economy to a certain extent.
Well, that's true.
I haven't thought about really what how to do that in a respectful, appropriately respectful way.
Yeah.
But
they're partying.
Yeah, exactly. There's a curfew. There's a midnight curfew, so it kind of puts a damper on nightlife. So everything closes
I have
at
a
10.
midnight curfew for myself.
Yeah, so not a lot of like going out late at bars.
That's when you start soldering.
Well, it was actually kind of nice because it meant that like I couldn't.
You got a normal sleep schedule?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's, everything is shut down by really 10 p.m. So it's time for people to get back.
I want to say like, so Dan needs a war.
Again, there's a way in which it's like it really focuses the mind and is motivated. Again, I was nowhere even remotely close to the front. I didn't hear an explosion.
Did you hear any gunfire?
No. Like,
okay.
Yeah,
even when you went to wherever it was that you went to help with these drones.
Yeah, they're like
they were in Kiev.
Yeah,
so, okay.
In and around Kyiv and
Kyiv.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Kiev is the Russian pronunciation and spelling.
I did not know that.
Kyiv is the Ukrainian.
Is that K-I-E-V then Kyiv? Because I think when I see it in my head, it's K-Y-E-V.
K-Y-I-V is the Ukrainian spelling.
Okay. But it's just the pronunciation is.
Well, Kiev is the transliteration from the Russian. Kyiv is the transliteration from Ukrainian.
Interesting. So I had the Ukrainian transliteration in my mind, but the pronunciation was Russian.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, and it's I still can't properly pronounce the name of the city that well because it uses a sound that isn't present in English. It's like Kyiv.
Okay.
Kyiv.
Yeah. How many people there spoke English?
Oh, tons.
Okay.
Yeah, not everybody, certainly not everybody.
Did you use your like Google Translator much?
I did. I communicated with the soldier about technical specs for things.
Okay.
Using Google
rolled
Translate.
his eyes again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to tell us.
Evasive about exactly what, technical specs for what. But yeah, we're talking about stuff over Google Translate. And also we had this guy who's doing translations for us. But yeah, I found I didn't have any particular problem like, going to stores and buying food and whatnot. The grocery store had a self-checkout. So like, the ATMs were, there's an option for English. So yeah, I found I could totally get around perfectly fine. At this point I can pretty much say hello and thank you, yes and no in Ukrainian. Like I meant to learn more, but I didn't.
Well, you were doing something, you were busy, and I get it. And you weren't going to live there. Like you were there just to support, basically. Yeah. So are there any, like, what are some other stories you have that you wanted to share?
Sure. Yeah.
About your experience?
Let's see. We went to a drone factory at one point in an undisclosed location where they brought out a couple of drones, just like civilian quadcopter drones, because that's a lot of what they're using. And they brought them out and we were talking, we had a meeting to say like, hey, what can we do for you? What do you need, etc. And so I brought out drones. We were like, turning them around, looking at them, kind of fiddling with them. And here's a drone that we use for spotting. And here's the one that we use for flying over and dropping bombs. And here's one that's a kamikaze drone that basically had a like anti-tank grenade, like zip tied to it essentially with like a 3D printed part on the front, and turn him over and look, oh, they're using a such and such for this thing, and like, oh, here's the kind of motor they're using and whatnot. About an hour into this meeting, one of them kind of stops for a bit and says like, you guys know that's a live round on that drone there, right? So I actually have.
You didn't bring a live.
No. Hold
on a second.
Yeah.
I just built this studio.
Yeah, exactly. So,
what is this?
This is the bottom half of a. I didn't get the exact type of what it is, but it's the bottom half of some kind of high explosive or maybe anti-tank grenade, where they just like use a Dremel and like metal shears to cut off the bottom.
Yeah, it looks like it's just done by hand.
Yeah. They cut off the bottom of it, put in some like 3D printed part and some wires into it and zip tied it to a drone. But like, yeah, literally you can just see the part where they metal sheared it off.
So this goes on a drone.
That originally came as part of a complete, grenade, mortar shell, something like that.
So this is one like the cap type thing.
Yeah. The back of it or something. But like they, just went and cut up a live explosive.
Yeah.
And then, jerry-rigged some wires and 3D printed parts into it and zip tied that to a drone. And it's like super ghetto, but they said like, yeah, we've gotten tank kills with things like this. So it's like, and it's cheap compared to military stuff. But yeah, that was the time that I handled a live grenade or mortar shell and didn't know it.
Probably best that you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny. My roommate there, who's not military either, he's an engineer. Like he and I both like pulled back in kind of shock, and then like all the Ukrainians, we had the American guys there too, like laughed at us. We're like, look at these idiots being nervous around a live munition. Like, what a bunch of wimps. So yeah, I had things like that, where it was just, the rocket launcher in the trunk of the car, where it's just like, well, guess just welcome to Ukraine, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Go ahead.
I got to climb over, and we can do some show and tell with some of the pictures. You can
I'll
these in
try
later.
to put these. Yeah, but and if you're listening, I'll describe, and I'll try to put a website
swipe through,
blog through as well. Oops.
Some of those
to kind of.
So
did you put this on Facebook?
I put some of them on Facebook. So is in kind of the middle of Kyiv, they have a permanent display of a number of destroyed Russian military vehicles, T-72, T-90 tanks.
This is really destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck did they do to it?
Hit it with an anti-tank guided missile or artillery or probably not a mine for those. But in that initial Russian attack towards Kyiv, that was the 40-mile convoy that some people might have heard of.
What's hanging there?
Some Ukrainian like ribbons, blue and yellow ribbons that people tied. And so, a whole bunch of tanks and armored vehicles and air defense systems and things got blown up by the Ukrainians. And then Ukrainian farmers would, hop on their tractor and tow these destroyed vehicles away. And so they had this display in the middle of Kyiv, sort of as if to say, this is the only way that Russian tanks are getting into Kyiv, is in flaming, twisted ruins.
Nice. Did you write this?
Oh, no.
Can I take it? Can I read it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
I did not write that.
Because it's in English.
Yep.
So prepare yourselves, listener, for some language. Okay. Dearest Putin, just die, you genocidal dwarf, dictator, little bitch, motherfucker. Sincerely, America.
Yep.
There we go. Nice. I like it. But that was just on there, you said.
Yeah, that people had written on them. People tied like blue and yellow flags, again, the Ukrainian colors, onto them. Their kids climbing on them.
You climbed on one.
I got some pictures on a T-72 tank and I think a Mista S self-propelled howitzer artillery system.
You should frame that.
Yeah, get it printed and frame it.
That's pretty cool.
It's a small subset of all the things they destroyed.
That's wild. There's just like a Ukrainian lady just, I don't know. Yeah, living, like hearing you describe it and seeing these pictures are just interesting. Cause like you said, as an American, I just think of it like, I just have pictures of, what's the Steven Spielberg movie?
Oh, Saving Private Ryan.
Well, but the Schindler's List or something like Poland after they were put into the ghetto. Like that's the images I think I have, and it's like that's not what's happening at all.
Yeah.
Ukraine is actually fighting back, and they're doing well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow, what a pretty city.
Yeah, it was very. That's kind of what I meant about, just it'd be a nice place to visit purely as a tourist thing.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm sure it did get a lot of tourists.
Yeah, there was.
Am I allowed to keep going?
Sure.
Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah, like that one's fine. But,
okay.
I'm more worried about it being, particular things being recorded because there's some. I guess another fun Ukraine story is that I got to see a test flight of one of their bomber drones. They have a whole bunch of different kinds of drones, some, from the commercial, like DJI, kind of small commercial quadcopters, all the way up to custom built, military, drones that can fly, over 10, let's say, kilometers each way and, drop bombs as, very good optics on it, can fly itself, can return to home autonomously, like expensive, big things that they'll use. And so we got to see them like running a training mission, basically, of like they sent up a smaller drone to do spotting, and they're talking about, we see this? Are we sure that it's not one of ours? Like, or, we have this drone here that I don't know how military operations are planned, but like going through the whole communication chain from detecting something to actually sending the drone up, and dropping, dummy rounds on it. Fun fact, they only told us that they were dummy rounds after they had already dropped them.
Were they messing with you or just?
I think they were messing with me. Yeah, I think because
So you're like,
I asked like, so are these live rounds? Because like they did the drone with the grenade on. It's like, hey, these guys are crazy. Like, I don't know what they're doing. But yeah, I was like half expecting to like for them to drop it and hear an explosion off in the distance. It's like, oh no, okay, they're dummies.
Yeah.
Like I asked them and they said like, yeah, don't worry about it. I was like, I kind of do want to worry about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely
They're just having some fun.
Yeah, exactly. At the Americans' expense.
Do it.
But yeah, they actually let me fly the drone for a bit at one point. I've a video I probably actually can share with like all the faces blurred and the location obscured. But yeah, this company I went to, they have these things where it's like basically a startup, like private company that will get its, I don't know exactly how the funding works. I didn't ask, but they'll get money from the Ukrainian military, and it's like 2 steps up from a guy in his garage. It's like 10 people in a commercial warehouse, with like plasma cutter and welding and designing, assembling, making these drones. And I actually have some stickers from their company. They have merch.
Oh, nice.
They have it's also on a hat as well.
Okay.
Like it's a startup company. They got merch, they've got hats, they got t-shirts.
So this is what they do. They make these quadcopter drones.
Yep.
That you put little missile on to be able
bombs,
to bomb to be able to drop.
Unguided bombs, yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah,
that's war, baby.
Yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
It's just in case. But I'll try to pop this up there.
Yeah, and you can for the people on the audio, it's a sort of front-on view of a black drone with a holding a bomb that's yellow on the bottom, blue on the top. Again, the Ukrainian flag motif.
Yeah.
But
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they there's a guy that we met there that was just like the most startup-iest, like crazy guy. He'd run up to us, like say something, and I can go a bit longer.
Okay.
Would like talk to us, say like, oh, here's what we're doing, like, speaking in Ukrainian. Our translator would like start translating, and this guy would go, oh, translator would be like, all right, slow down, let me say something. Then he'd like, the CEO of the company would like run off across the place, like go to some guys and say like, oh, no, don't put this thing in that way. Like, no, you want to put this in first and like put the batteries in there like that. And then run over to some other place and like check on the 3D printers and then run back to us and say like, just like the most energetic person, just like bouncing around these different places. At one point during the training exercise, out in the field in a location, we're like, I've been doing this for a while, I want some pizza. And I saw them like they're kind of getting together and like had like messing around with like some tape and string and stuff. And I asked the guy like, hey, what are they doing there? And he said, oh, they want to get pizza, and they're trying to decide whether they should just like fly the drone over to the pizza place and then like attach the pizzas to the drone somehow and then fly it back.
Seriously saying this, or just
eventually they decided not, and they just drove out there. But it was
I feel like that would terrify the people.
Yeah, well, that was actually a thing that
what is happening?
Yeah, that was actually a thing that I felt. I was at I can give you another video at some point. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. You can scroll through some of these.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a video, not
I have some pictures.
not an audio.
Yeah,
I mean, not a picture.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try to like hold it up to the mic. But we were at this like really nice.
It was pretty.
I don't know, poolside venue place where they had this charity concert where they had like an orchestra playing like pop and rock music. So they had Eye of the Tiger on like, you know, violins and flutes and cello and saxophone and whatnot. And then they did an auction there where they auctioned off that rocket launcher that was painted by a local artist.
Oh,
which
okay.
I'm kicking myself that I was bringing it there to the auction. I'm kicking myself that I didn't buy it, though. Getting it back here would be difficult. I think that'd be hard.
You might be able to get through. I mean, you have to like tell them in advance and like or maybe ship it to yourself.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
A light show. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll put those up as videos.
Yeah.
But at one point there was somebody put up a drone overhead to take video of the concert, and I could see everybody, you know, all the Ukrainians in the audience, kind of like looking up at it nervously. And like I found myself getting kind of nervous about it too, even though I saw somebody on the ground launch it up, like I knew it was totally fine. But
I mean, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it's like totally normal civilian, regular, drone. But for people that are like, on the front lines, if there's a drone that spots you, that might mean that there are artillery shells already in the air on their way to you.
Yeah. No, that's legitimately scary.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and so I could just kind of I could feel some of the tension there. I don't know if you want to.
I want it all.
Yeah. Let's go.
We got to, your schedule is the issue. I'm interested in all these stories. I mean, there's a lot more questions I have depending on timing.
Yeah.
Just because like there's the issue. I mean, like, I know you can't talk about a lot of the details, but
I think basically anything that's not like, here is the location of this.
No, I understand.
Here's exactly what I experience is like, I'm totally fine.
Yeah. Cause the experience to me, the broader question is still the, why now? Is it just an adventure? What did you believe in the cause? Like, and then, when there's this war that is happening and you chose it because of these two reasons you said about there's a continuation. It's been going on for a while. This is good versus evil that you've ever known, based on your value system, of course.
Yep.
And one thing you haven't mentioned that's not a personal experience that I think is relevant, though. So it's an experience of good and evil. You go here to use your skills, but there's to help them with this cause. But there is I do think there's a relevance to all Americans that I think we should make sure people know.
Yeah.
That it's not just, so there's the two sides I understand is there's one very strong argument by people like Jordan Peterson, who's like, we should not support this because it will lead to World War III. We're going to have nukes. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And then there's other side, and I think I don't agree with that. Although I know it's a possibility, but it's also a possibility if we wait till later, which is the other problem. The other real reality is dictators are not rational. He has a sweeping vision, and they're always going to expand their vision
until they're stopped. That's something we know about dictators. Is not the first dictator in the goddamn world. Yeah. I don't know how people are freaking confused about dictators. And it's not the first time he's invaded It's not even the first time for this dictator. Yeah, for this specific dictator.
Like, it's like I don't know what people need to know about dictators that is like, this guy is a... But, because the pro supporting Ukraine side that I'm on, personally, just so people know, is the... if we didn't do anything, and if we don't do anything and we don't give support, and I don't think we should give our soldiers personally, but
I agree.
Our financial support, whatever we can to help them with our military, like it's, it's a complicated political situation, but to me, we have allies nearby. And if something goes wrong at Ukraine, it's going to be way costlier once we have to go to Poland.
Exactly.
And that's going to be a different situation.
Yeah. And that's where nukes might more come into the picture.
Yeah.
More likely to come into the
picture. And that's when nukes are much more likely to come into the picture. Exactly.
Yes. Because at this point we're
a hot war with first world countries of massive magnitude.
Yeah.
And Russia might feel threatened with massive movements by the Americans. And then, now we can at least try to stop them in their tracks, halt their economy to such a degree that, maybe someone takes out Putin and the next person, or Putin just gives up.
God, I hope so. That's, there's not a lot of people that deserve to die as much as him.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, from a geopolitical standpoint, those are the two arguments I hear. And, it's weird the amount of ignorance from someone as brilliant, for instance, as Jordan Peterson, who, I don't know if you've seen the stuff he's said about this, but
only a little bit.
Well, he gave like this really impassioned, I think got millions of views of him like, we gotta stop it's gonna be the end of the world. And it's like in his Jordan Petersonian way.
Yeah.
And it was just, a lot of people I think agreed with that to some degree. And
I
understand the fear.
Yeah. The fear of nuclear exchange is not fundamentally unreasonable. Like, I don't want there to be a nuclear war. Like, nobody wins a nuclear war. Like, absolutely. I'm not like, it'd be fine. It's no big deal. That would be terrible. I think supporting Ukraine is the best way to avoid that. Because if Russia wins in Ukraine, like, multiple levels of their government, I think Medvedev, I think he's the prime minister, has said, like, their lead propagandists have said that once they finish with Ukraine, Poland's next.
But even if they don't say that,
Hitler,
like you mentioned Hitler earlier, he said the same thing.
Yeah.
About what was it, the Rhineland or whatever. And like they just kept giving him a little bit more. And of course that's what they're going to say. They're not going to say, we want to kill all of you people. Like that's,
but even, you have sometimes
they do say that.
They'll say
like the Shah of Iran does actually say that, death to America. And we're like, oh, does he mean it?
Yeah. I wonder.
No shit, dude. Yeah, he means it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things you saw back, lead up to World War II is, Hitler would take the Sudetenland and say, this is all I want. Just once I have this, then I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Then, you're not going to start a war over just this one little bit of Czechoslovakia, are you? Then I'll be satisfied. And, then a couple weeks, months later, he says, actually, I want the rest of Czechoslovakia, just one little bit. You're not going to start a whole thing over just Czechoslovakia, are you? And then, give him that. And same thing with Austria. And here, there's exactly the same dynamic at play. Putin takes Crimea in 2014 and the part of the Donbass. And, people think, maybe he'll just be happy with Crimea and half the Donbass. And are we really going to start something big over these two little parts? We'll take that and be satisfied. Oh, turns out, no, he's not. Yeah. But even more, you can infer that from his actions and stuff, even more to see, like, they're explicitly saying they want to go to Warsaw next. They want to go to Tallinn next. So, if that happens, if they actually make an attack on a NATO country, then we're really in there. Then it's a lot more expensive. And we're not losing American troops now. We are giving financial aid. Like, for sure, I don't want to downplay that, but a lot of what the US has been giving is weapons. Yeah. And like, we're not going to solve homelessness in San Francisco with HIMARS or cluster munitions or like,
Oh, you're saying like people are giving the argument like we should take care of our own here.
Yeah, and like
Well, yeah,
fundamentally, that's not like
we should do that, but
Yes. But also,
the
the
reason I use
bombs
that-
are not going to help that.
Yeah, but the other thing is, my understanding was that a lot of the military equipment we are giving is actually
Is old.
Yeah, it's old. It's not our top of the line stuff. It's just sitting there anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why don't we do something with this before some of it could go bad? Like certain munitions.
Yeah, explosives go bad.
So it's like, yeah, give it to them and kill that dude, Putin. And it's unfortunate that there's Russians who probably don't know what they're actually getting into that are dying too, but that's not our problem.
Yeah.
That's their problem. That's Russia's problem. But
yeah.
But I think that's a weird view that we have in America today in our political, understanding of the world. And maybe this, I don't know enough about the mindset of Americans in like, I know in Vietnam we didn't want to go at all, but that was actual soldiers.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been other times in history when we supported militarily with or with munitions without actually fighting. And I don't know what people felt
like the
back then.
Iran-Contra thing, but again,
Well, but that one was different, right? There's a little bit about that where Reagan was like not supposed, like he said he wasn't going to do that, and that's why it was a whole fiasco.
Yeah,
he explicitly said I'm not going to do this. And he secretly did it.
Yeah,
that's a little different.
Yeah,
I think because that's getting caught in a lie. But
yeah,
isn't that where the lies were or mistakes were made? Or something
is that
like
originally from that?
Well, I'm sure people have other stuff, but just like there's a famous thing of like these, I've heard people like these magical mistakes somehow occurred.
Yeah,
Nobody actually did them. It's like he didn't say like I made a mistake. It's like mistakes were made.
Yeah, gotta love the passive voice.
Like, I think that's right. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, but that's another reason I wanted to make sure we got clear on this podcast of understanding, why you did this, why it's important to, not necessarily you don't have to go visit, or go, volunteer. You don't have to, but just like being aware and understanding what's happening and why it's relevant to you.
I think there's another part of sort of general geopolitical American relevance is that the message it sends to other dictatorships, in particular China, because and this is something I don't understand. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to say, oh, we get, $17.5 billion of value out of that. But if we send, if Russia invades Ukraine, we don't do anything, don't impose sanctions or anything like that. What that says to other dictators is we can go invade, conquer land, and nobody's really going to do anything about it. Versus if, China thinks that if they were to try to invade Taiwan, embargo on their products, maybe blockade of fuel supplies to China. If they think the consequences are going to be much more severe, they're much less likely to attempt it in the first place. And so sending a message, not just to Russia, but again, to other, tin pot dictatorships that you're not going to get away with this.
Yeah.
That's valuable. That's, even if it's doesn't end up being a NATO country, if, America is very plugged into the global system. If Vietnam gets invaded by, Bangladesh or something, I don't know. But, if some other country, invades somewhere, like we get products from there. We have supply chains that are integrated there. Like things that happen elsewhere in the world affect us. Yeah. And the more that dictators learn the lesson that they can invade and conquer countries in a nakedly aggressive, brutal way, the more it's going to push them more in the direction to do that. So by showing, partially through economic, military means, that we, the Europeans, the broader Western world, are going to stand up to that, it makes it less likely that China is going to invade Taiwan, which, a lot of people are concerned about Taiwan, and China, as I think is reasonable.
Yeah.
The other point I'd make kind of more concretely is to say, what is our military for? The U.S. military. We say protect the rights of Americans, but specifically from whom? Who is our military designed to fight? Well, China, probably number one. Russia, I'd say number two, maybe, I don't know, Iran, North Korea, various Islamic terrorists, things like that. But Russia is the second biggest threat, perhaps, debatably, first, second, third, somewhere in the top three, that our military is configured to fight. We spend an enormous amount of money building capabilities to be able to fight Russia if we need to. Yeah. We hope that it doesn't actually have to get used. But here we can send our old vehicles that have been rusting in a supply yard somewhere and actually destroy, I don't know, something over 1,000 Russian tanks at this point.
Is that the number we know of?
The visually confirmed. I don't have all the numbers memorized, but yeah, there's a site, Oryx, which, God bless those people. They'll take images from social media, Twitter things, that Telegram, and stuff.
Compile the data and
try to deduplicate them and show images of every single Russian or Ukrainian destroyed vehicle that they can find, try to identify it, try to, categorize it. When was it destroyed? Is it destroyed, abandoned, damaged, whatnot? But yeah, so that's a lower bound. But yeah, we can see that at least 1,000 Russian tanks have been destroyed so far with 0 American military casualties. That's an amazing deal for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, you think about it, if we support Ukraine wins the war, oh my God, we're going to have a geopolitical, best friend for the next, century. You think the amount of gratitude they have for, me, random dude, going over there, there is, you saw a lot of American flags around. They're just, to the extent that you think it's valuable to have other countries in especially geopolitically relevant regions of the world that have an extremely positive opinion of us. Again, this is a, in the grand scheme of things, pretty cheap way of buying an unbelievable amount of goodwill.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense in terms of important things for us to keep in mind of why the world matters to us as individuals. And even if it's not visually apparent or readily and easily available to your knowledge base, is that there's things that do happen in the world that are important, and figuring out what those are is challenging, but that's part of why I think studying culture and history and literature and philosophy kind of helps you to think about the varying levels of, context needed to understand what's actually happening there, why it's different than other situations, why there's a hierarchy of what's relevant to our own immediate lives in this massive geopolitical world, because we don't know. There's a lot that happens in the world also that we don't even know what's going on. Yeah. And so maybe this is just what the mainstream media is telling us right now, right? And that's all there is. And maybe there's a bigger war in China that's where we need to be focused on. And, who cares about Russia, and let Europe take care of that. So, and there's some arguments there too, but I think it's making these decisions, and we have important elections coming up. This is an important thing that we should be thinking about as individual voters. And I think your vote does matter. Oh, yeah. And at least in the sense of telling, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, your side, what you feel. Yeah. Right? About certain issues.
Well, even I think writing letters to representatives makes a difference.
Yeah. And I think opinions always make a difference in terms of understanding your own impact on the world, even if it's a really, really small one. That's really what a culture is, right? It's
Yeah.
And America has a bunch of subcultures, and that's what makes it so complicated. But your adherence to any individual one or non-adherence or removal from it, from any subculture, is relevant to that subculture and the political power that it has in America.
Well, that's related, I think, to the support that, or I don't know, position you could say that people like Jordan Peterson have for Russia. I think it's oversimplifying and unfair to call him pro-Russia, but
no, he's not pro-Russia. He's anti. He fears them. He's
anti the amount of support to Ukraine that we're giving. There's some people that
might be pro-Russia. I don't know.
Yeah, there's sort of a spectrum of people that are like explicitly pro-Russia and then kind of, more sympathetic. And, so I don't want to unfairly mischaracterize him, and I also haven't listened to that much of what he said, so I'm speaking somewhat.
But he was pretty adamant about we shouldn't be supporting because it could lead to the end of the world.
Yeah.
That's his whole shtick.
Yeah.
At least it was. I haven't looked at it recently.
But I know for people like Tucker Carlson, that quote in the beginning, I think part of what's going on there is sort of it playing into the broader like culture war, like American domestic culture war side of things, where Russia has been able to, through like explicit propaganda efforts by Russia, though it's, I don't want to write off everything as just Russian propaganda, been able to position itself as against the country that's standing against wokeness and the country.
Yeah, that was another thing. I think that's why a lot of people like Putin. Oddly, it's like, well, at least he doesn't allow gays.
Yeah,
it's like, really?
He's against transgender stuff.
Yeah, like he won't. You ain't got no mixed bathrooms over there.
Yeah,
real. That's shit. Like, so let's fire.
America has the they them army. That's when you hear a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think those issues are not important to think about at home, but it's just like it is a bizarre reason to, I mean, you made a term reductio ad Hitlerian or something like that, right? I think I
did not originate that term, but
I know, but I think of the Hitler example as actually really important because I know people say it's overused, but he's an arc example for a reason. Like he is the prototype of the villain that we know of. We should know more of these types of people because I think it becomes a trope and it becomes a cliche and people start thinking it's not true or it's over exaggerated or something. And so we should know about, Pol Pot and Stalin and variety of other, dictators throughout history but czars in Russia and there's a common occurrence throughout all of history really. But the point is that he is an important one for us right now because he's so popular in the culture. People do have some idea of this Hitler guy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very relevant that there's a lot of crossover between these people. And so when you think about, if you're thinking about this
playbook,
I think there's obviously some differences, but I wouldn't put it past Putin that if he could have concentration camps for certain types of ethnicities, that he wouldn't do it. Like he's like somehow above stuff like that. Like I just, and we think of, the atrocities of Hitler against Jews and gypsies, but it's, I think Putin doesn't do that because there's too many cameras, not because he doesn't want to, eradicate enemies that he doesn't like in certain other cultures he's not a fan of. He's
sending people off to Siberia.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's spotlights that weren't there as much, I think, at the time. I don't think it's the only reason, but
sure.
Yeah, there's no indication that a person who would invade another country without being provoked wouldn't do that or something like it in his own way, some kind of massacre, starvation. It's not like, Russia hasn't done that in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Ukrainians have like very good memories of the starvations and genocides that Russia in the not too distant past put them through. I actually talked to the first day I was there. I talked to the grandfather of our translator, who was 90 and who'd lived through the post-World War II famines created by Russia, Soviet Union, and told, we were only there for a brief time, but told some just truly horrific stories about, like, a mother trying to get some milk for her kid and a soldier kicking it away and laughing at her as she was begging, like, how am I going to feed my child? Or people fighting over bits of bread. Like, this is within the living memory of a guy I talked to a month ago. Like, and so there's it results in a very strong culture of, like, it being really important to finish all your food, because in the not too distant past that they had horrible food shortages, which is ironic for a country that now feeds 400 million people around the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's they have a very good sense of what's at stake for them. With Putin, you don't see the kind of systematic, just like mass executions that gas chambers that you had in Nazi Germany. It's more like torture, deportation, maybe killing on individual basis, but not kind of at the industrial scale that Nazi Germany has. Small solace to take. That's a small, comfort that, well, at least it's not literally as bad as the worst thing that anyone's ever done.
But I mean, like, so tell me if you think I'm wrong in my premise. My premise is that maybe he might even think of this as a tactic of war, but I think that's what Hitler would think about it in terms of, power and growth and trying to, develop the Third Reich and all that stuff. So in that march toward the grandiosity of Mother Russia and that vision that Putin has, do you think it would be beyond him to cut off like a whole city of 1 million people and just let them die, starve to death? Like, would he, if that was something necessary for him to do, or he thought of it that way to move on to the next part of his plan or something, do you think he would not do that?
I mean, that's pretty much what happened in Mariupol.
Exactly.
At the beginning of the war. There, it wasn't so much they cut it off, it's that they shelled it with artillery into oblivion. Would say they were setting up humanitarian corridors for civilians to escape, and then bomb them as the civilians were trying to evacuate through these corridors. So yeah, I absolutely would not.
But I mean, I'm trying to even say something something he's capable of. So I'm saying, like, let's pretend for a moment he is stopped at a certain point in Ukraine. He gets more, let's say, knock on wood, nothing like this happens, but he takes chunks of Ukraine, restructures it for a little while, and in his
parts now,
no, I understand that, but I mean, like, he continues into it, and there's a kind of pause for a while on the ceasefire for some, but he sees some kind of like effort in his long-term plan that I don't know what it is, but he could cut something off and let them all die. Like, do you think because that to me is Hitlerian.
Yeah.
Right. That kind is what I'm saying about the Hitlerian, like the extermination of the Jews is kind of like, I mean, obviously there's racism, there's all this other psychology, but I think it's the same thing here. He's like, he could cut off some part of the western part of Ukraine. Let's say he had that opportunity. Well, that's where all the bad people are.
Yeah.
That's where this growth.
That's where the Ukrainian Nazis.
That's where the Ukrainian Nazis are. And that's what I'm saying is, like, the Hitler example is important because Hitler was able to, like, it was a certain era in history where his power was close to everybody else's and more than most everyone else's at the time, which is what allowed him to do what he did.
Yeah.
But Putin is that. He is that. And you have to understand, even if he hasn't done it, the principle behind evil is there.
Yeah.
And that's like, that motive is there. And once you understand that motive is there, to me, that's evil, right? That's what he's, and so you understand that there's, that's the principle he's acting on. We've seen this. We've seen it sufficient amount of evidence to have that he is a Hitler. He just hasn't been allowed to do it in the way that he would if he had, like, he's capable of that kind of atrocity.
That's fortunately, I don't live in his head, so I can't say what he
But that's
feels.
not what I'm saying. Like, so that's like something Ayn Rand called the psychology of psychologizing. Or not psychology, but psychologizing of, like, I don't care about that. I care about the motivating behavior that I can see. Yeah. And I can see, like, because you could go all day about, Jordan Peterson does this too, with Hitler and cleanliness and the way it's like, that's okay. That's interesting. Fine. We could read about Genghis Khan and Hitler and they like to wash their hands or whatever. Okay. But what I'm saying is, like, the principle behind evil, like there's that, once, it's the same thing about a criminal who's a certain kind of criminal who, like, goes down and down that path. Maybe they can reform, but once they go down that path, there's a kind of capabilities that they have. Yeah. And so my premise is that Putin is capable of the same atrocity as any dictator. Yeah. He's capable of that. That's my premise.
I think so. My thesis. In fairness to Putin, for what it's worth, we haven't seen the kind of murder for the sake of murder on a large scale that you saw with Hitler. With Hitler, the point of exterminating the Jews is to get rid of them, like, not to occupy their territory, but, like, the point was for them to die. We don't see that really with Putin, where it's mass deportations with the sole purpose of just killing people. There's obliterating cities, which results in a lot of civilian deaths. There's widespread abuses, murders, rapes, things like that, at a certain point, if you're not putting a stop to that, accountability for that kind of goes up the ladder. But you don't see the killing for the sake of killing.
Not even like gay people, or
not that I'm aware of. He's locked up a lot of them in prison, but I think, again, if we're going way down the line of, like, making fine distinctions between different levels of, like, way off the charts evil, we haven't seen that yet. And, like, is he capable of it? I don't know. He's, they've actually kind of made a big show about, look at what we rebuilt in Mariupol. Isn't it great that Russia is here to build this city? Look how...
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. Of course he wants to rebuild a city.
But the part of the propaganda...
and grandiosity.
But part of the propaganda is to say they're better off with us in charge.
Sure.
And maybe, the ones who we've left alive are better off with us.
Okay. I understand that that's not been his modus operandi yet.
Yeah.
That's not my point, I guess. My point is that given the opportunity, if it was necessary, he has it in him. And because of the way he is, like, there's, I'm just saying, like, I do believe there's, archetypal type of behavior that we all kind of operate under, whether we understand it or not. And if you have the kind of mentality of grand vision that he has,
imperial,
like, I just don't see that that's not something. I understand that he wouldn't, take all the people of a certain color, but he might if he thought. My point is that, like, if there was, I don't know enough about the makeup of the, that territory race wise and all the cultures, but if he, like, identified as one of the core problems, some group, he would just, I don't see it's beyond him to eradicate them if he could without people knowing about it, or, that's my point is,
Gotcha. Yeah.
That if he could starve them and not people know about it, I don't think he would
have a problem with that. Yeah.
That's my principle behind this.
Yeah. Well, and certainly it's been a big part of the occupied areas to like de-Ukrainianify people, force them to speak Russian, force them to, sing the Russian
or
national
do what
anthem.
To them, probably.
Yeah, or torture them, beat them.
Yeah.
Like we have like so many stories of people, Ukrainian soldiers who were come back in prisoner exchanges that were just, abused in horrible ways. That they saw other prisoners being beaten to death. Like, it's, yeah, but with part of the goal, some of it seems to be pure sadism, but part of it seems to be to try to like convert them into Russians, so to speak.
Okay, so why don't we wrap up with some last stories that you might have still in you of Ukraine, lighthearted or serious. I don't know what, we've had a lot of serious issues today. If you have more serious experiences or lighthearted experiences, I don't know what are some of the highlights of your 3 weeks there, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's about 3 weeks. It was originally going to be like a week and a half, but shortly after I got there, I thought like this is amazing and meaningful. I need to extend my stay here.
Yeah.
One of them, and let's say I usually get emotional talking about it. The first weekend that I was there, we went and played soccer with some of the soldiers that we knew. They smoked us, oh my God. But afterward, this is like a weekly thing that they all did. They invited us to. Afterward, we went to this place, Hydro Park. It's this, you can put up a map, I guess, of it in the recording. It's an island in the middle of the Dnipro River. So that's the main river that runs through all of Ukraine. It's kind of the Ukrainian equivalent of the Mississippi River. Kyiv is right on that river. And kind of splits Kyiv in half.
I have a picture now.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
And there are a couple of islands in the river just right next to Ukraine. I can grab some pictures of it and show you. So this is me in the river there, and you can see the Motherland Monument in the background. The for those listening, it's this giant silver statue of a woman holding up a sword and a shield above her head. This was installed in the, I think, 60s as a commemoration of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. So it's kind of analogous to the Statue of Liberty. It's a iconic Ukrainian statue. Interesting side note, I'm getting sidetracked. While I was there, it had a hammer and sickle on it because it was a Soviet monument. While I was there, they actually took off the hammer and sickle and put up the Ukrainian trident in its place. Yeah. Which, as national symbols go, it's a very excellent one. Anyway, so Hydro Park, this little island in the middle of the river. It's not developed at all, so it's all forest, and there's a couple like small like barbecue stands basically, but no like big buildings. So it's this kind of nature preserve, just almost right in the middle of the city. And we went there, just like hung out on the beach, lay in the sun. The water is really warm. Got some food, and as we were hanging out there, as the day went on, eventually there were a bunch of families that came out, kids, running and playing in the water, digging up sand and making sand castles and stuff. And it reminded me of when I was growing up. I grew up in a pretty rural area outside of Philadelphia. There was a lake like that, kind of similar thing near where I lived. During the summer, we'd go there. in like the afternoon, evening, and, build sandcastles, play in the water. And on that lake, they had a boat rental house. Again, this is where I grew up. And I remember going out on canoes with my father, just, kind of tooling around the lake, going by the trees and stuff. And it was such a, in retrospect, like pure and iconic and innocent experience for me. And kind of as I'm realizing like, formative and just this, absolutely peaceful, in a way, totally mundane kind of thing. And so fast forward, when I was at Hydro Park, I was looking at this, big, beautiful river. And I said to one of the guys, like, oh man, like if this was Austin with our Ladybird Lake here, it'd be covered with paddle boards and kayaks and things, canoes and whatever. Like, what's going on? Why don't they, where's everything? And one of them said like, oh yeah, they ban all boats on the river because, if you have some, if there's hundreds of boats out there, thousands of boats, and somebody has, they managed to sneak one in with a bomb and, sail it under a bridge and blow it up, it could, destroy one of the bridges.
Yeah.
Going across the river in Kyiv. And so they just, completely ban all, there's a police patrol boat that went across at one point. And that was one of those moments where had been hanging out, it's a nice day in the sun, and this brought it back to reality.
Yeah.
And I just, it made me think of this, kind of comparing my experience of this, amazing, serene, pure, harmless experience that I had growing up with my father that, by right, everybody should have, and that the people here are being deprived of that. And I just thought of like, what it would be like for me, thinking about if I had been deprived of that experience with my dad to, go out on the lake, paddle under the trees and through the algae and stuff because somebody had launched this totally senseless, pointless war. Like, how much of a, essential, meaningful part of my life would have been wiped out. And, for these people, that's their reality. That, yes, something that they should be able to enjoy. That, again, it's, children sailing around with their parents, that at least for the duration of the war, they don't get to experience.
Yeah. Like, if you had kids, you'd want them to enjoy that, and it could be taken away from you type thing. And like, and that's I don't like using the word lucky in a sense because America fought a lot of wars to do this. But there is a sense where like, being born in this area, there's a privilege in a sense of not having to worry about that as much. And I can understand the reaction to that kind of dawning of realization. Because it's one thing to, again, intellectually understand something, to study it, to read about it, to watch interviews.
See destroyed buildings.
Even that, which are horrific, to see bodies like.
Didn't see any bodies.
I'm saying like on videos, like I've seen dead bodies and news shows, like, and that's horrific. But I can understand when you're like swimming in a lake and it's there's some good poetry and not good in that, but just like strong, poetry there of that kind of an art of that kind of experience. For sure.
Yeah. That out of everything else, it was, the realizing why there were no boats on the river that really hit me the hardest.
Yeah. We've gone over, so I don't know if you have other stories, but there's, I'll tell you a poem to go read that I think you might start appreciating, especially given your age, actually, which is one of my favorite poems. I actually wrote about this poem in my literary magazine, the print one that I did for Troubadour magazine. And it's called "On This Day I Complete My 36th Year." And so I don't know if you know who Lord Byron is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
familiar.
I couldn't.
I don't know if you know
poems.
What's that?
I couldn't name it.
Yeah, but I don't know. Did you know he went to Greece to fight for Greek independence in the War of 1820s, early 1820s, and that's how he died.
Oh wow!
And he went there. He put a lot of his money, sold I think some of his property to give to support, because he was always a lover of Greece, what it represented. It had been occupied by the Turkish Ottoman Empire, from the 1400s until 1827. I think it was something like that, or 1821. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but that kind of thing. But he had a similar experience. So I think you might, it's a short poem. It's not super long.
Sure, please.
I won't do it right now or anything, but I think you should read it. I think you might appreciate it, because he had a very similar experience in terms of, he talks about he's had this kind of privilege. He's very wealthy. He's part of the aristocracy, the Lord, right? And he experiences it very similar to what you talked about. And now he relates it a little bit more to age than you do, because 36 is very young, of course. But there's
the age that you'd really want to be running around in the mud with a rifle.
Yeah, but exactly. Although he was going to do that. That was the plan. But it didn't happen for a variety of reasons. And anyway, other things happen. It's a whole biography. But the point is that he had this, he was always kind of dilettante. He was always sleeping around. He was, known as mad, bad, and dangerous to know. He's the type of guy that if you're married, you take your women away from him, because
hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah, exactly. He had that reputation, and he loved a lot. He wrote poetry. He was famous. He played. He did. He had all that stuff, and he just came to this realization of something more profound and historic was occurring in Greece in their fight for, and he's also growing up in an era of revolution. He's born in 1780. So, which is a little different. But the point is, I'm just saying, I think it's an interesting, this poem might resonate with you in terms of what you just said. If, you kind of experience a little bit, he said, the sword, the banner in the field, glory and Greece around me see, the Spartan born upon his shield was not more free. And he has these lines of this, this desire for fighting, to do something with this cause that's a historic ancient cause, but he relates it to his personal experience of changing as a man. It is time this heart should be unmoved, since others it hath ceased to move, yet though I cannot be beloved, still let me love. And it's a kind of recognition of, this experience in life where he's not found the love of his life yet. There's certain things he's not accomplishing, but he's not going to give up on that deep passion of love. And he's just gonna, and he goes on, I'm not going to go into all of it. But the fire that on my bosom prays is lone as some volcanic isle. No torch is kindled at its blaze, a funeral pile. The idea is there's, there's the fire in my bosom is still there. I'm not gonna let it go. And anyway, I won't go on, but the point is, I think you might really like that.
Yeah.
I thought of that. And you're 36.
Yep.
So I wrote
not a Lord,
an essay
yet,
on this, on my 36th birthday for my magazine Troubadour, because obviously but yeah. And he, hopefully you'll make it to 37. He did not make it to 37. So that's another irony about the poem. Anyway. But yeah, so he did something similar on his 36th birthday. And that's an interesting parallel. Yeah. So you got something in common with Lord Byron.
Cool. Claim to fame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't get to shake hands with Zelensky, but I got something similar to him.
Yeah. I don't know if he shook hands. Well, yeah, he probably did actually.
But he was known. Yeah. Zelensky has better things to do than photo ops with random Americans.
Yeah. Okay. Any finale or final thoughts? Something you want to get out that you didn't get to?
I mean, there's, a whole bunch, I could talk about the geopolitics and military procurement and stuff for hours, but I guess it was at the same time difficult and encouraging in a way to come back home. Difficult in that it's been very difficult to get terribly excited about politics here, or even stuff at work, or just it kind of in comparison to this grand civilizational struggle and a war of annihilation, to come and talk about Q4 plans just like is hard. It's hard. Or the flashpoints of culture war stuff in America, it's just been like, I can't get excited about that stuff anymore. Real, sure. I'm sure. And sort of the flip side of that's nice is, I think in America, it's so easy to get completely absorbed with culture war stuff and like, oh, what did this person say? Isn't that horrifying and ridiculous? What does this one thing do? And just kind of having the perspective of, not that all those things are irrelevant. Like, a lot of those things are genuinely important, but I found it allowed me to kind of turn down the volume on that, or just turn down just get less stressed out about, transgender bathrooms and things, because it's, again, not irrelevant. We don't have to get as worked up as we do about it, even if we're going to have real disagreements. And that was one of the things that I noticed there's this incredible sense of common purpose among everybody. There is one political issue for Ukrainians right now. And it creates a degree of commonality and camaraderie that, compared to the U.S., where there's people talking about, maybe a civil war, we split the country up, we're so different culturally that we can't live with those people. Yeah. It's horrible that it requires, and I don't know the details of, Ukrainian cultural stuff beforehand, but it's horrible that it would require a war like that to bring people together. But you really feel that sense of commonality of purpose, even in things, I thought every moment that any Ukrainian there was continuing to live their life as normal, pushing a kid in a stroller or going to a restaurant, every moment of freedom and being able to act without subjugation was an act of defiance. Yeah. That it's the, being able to sing the Ukrainian national anthem, to hang the flag, to, speak Ukrainian even, unmolested by Russia, that is at stake for them. So every little mundane daily moment is an act of defiance. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you got some soul searching to do, man. You got to figure out what, how to find that passion and purpose and meaning, I think, because you're a builder, as we said at the beginning. And I think that's something to hopefully, I mean, this is like a whole nother show now of, Talk to Gina Gorlin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so I think it's something to definitely ponder about yourself, and hopefully what I can add is hopefully some poetry and literature. Gina can add some, she's a psychologist. Yep. Dr. Gina Gorlin, Gorlin. She has a Substack. Check it out. Building the Builders.
Yep.
But so I think it's I don't think you're alone in the feeling that you have. I think you're alone in the action you took. You're like one of 5 type or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very extreme action, but it's
Yeah.
good. And it shows something about yourself, as we were talking at the beginning about, the type of person you are and the shape of the life you want to lead. And your life's not going to be meaningless from here on out because you're not in a war.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that if that's what you needed to wake up, or I don't know if you needed to wake up, but whatever,
Oh, for sure.
then good, and go live your life, man, and get your priorities in order, put those kids on that lake.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause that's, I think, something you want.
I really like that way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, sorry, Mom and Dad, I definitely want to go back.
To Ukraine?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It was,
Okay.
I need to figure out how to like actually earn an income. Like I just took vacation days while I was absolutely not there as, in any relation to Google or YouTube or anything.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
no, none of that. But yeah, I absolutely would like to go back at some point, hopefully before too long.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you for sharing. I think we talked for a while.
Yeah, we went about an hour
2.5
over what we'd
yeah, a
agreed
little bit. Yeah.
on.
Well, don't ever tell me to keep going, because I'll keep going.
We only touched a small part of all the Ukraine
there's so
stuff
much.
I want to talk
This
about.
is endless.
Yeah.
No, this is endless. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. This is fun in the sense of enlightening, not fun in the sense of
Not a
light
lighthearted
subject.
romp. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day.